The topic today is what is Dharma? It is based on the teachings of Sri Murti, and my name is Dada Rainjitananda. I start with a statement. In this vast universe, there are so many planets, so many stars, so many celestial bodies, and amongst all of them, we find our planet, the Earth. And in our planet, there are many beings, less developed, more developed. And amongst all these beings are the human beings. And we are the highest evolved beings on the planet. Now, why are we considered the highest evolved beings? As human beings, we have a clearly reflected consciousness. And with that consciousness, we have the capacity to distinguish between what is good and what is bad. So, what is good? Good is that which helps us to move towards what we really want. And bad is what creates obstacles. Now, every human being, we want a good life. We don't want suffering. We want just happiness. We want bliss. And that is common to every being, even to other beings. It's also common that we want a good life. We can even say that everyone is in quest for happiness. Every being wants to be happy. And that also relates to other beings, not only human beings, even animals, plants. Animals will look for a nice place to be. Plants, they will also move towards the light where they can get nourishment. But in this quest for happiness, what happens? First, we are attracted to physical enjoyments. We want some wealth, we want power, we want position. But is that what we really want? And why are we attracted to that? Let me put a question to all of you. Just let's test one of the features here. It's a simple question. Let's see the results. All right, so the question was what human beings really want. And money and wealth, nobody. Fame and name, nobody. Power and position, nobody. Okay, 21% happiness and peace, 79% infinite happiness and permanent peace. Okay, so most of us in this class think that we human beings want infinite happiness and permanent peace, and a small percentage just happiness and peace. Maybe it can be that the percentage, the 1%, the 21% there that say we only want happiness and peace, may have chosen that because you may think that permanent or infinite happiness and permanent peace is not possible. It depends. Let's analyze this happiness. Okay. If happiness we get from something external, it will never be permanent because the external object sometimes give us pleasure, sometimes give us pain. And in the external world, there will always be something that's not very pleasant. For example, somebody will die in our family. That cannot be avoided. Some problems will come, also cannot be avoided. Some disease, so many things can happen, which make us, let's say, unhappy. So, from the external world, there will always be happiness, sadness, or unhappiness. And that's normal. Now, this infinite happiness and permanent peace, we cannot get it from the external world. We have to get it from within. And it's a different state from the happiness and peace that we get from the external world. In Sanskrit, which is the language we use for the philosophy, there are two words here. This regular happiness and peace that we get from the external world, we call it sukha. Sukha means we are getting happiness, and there is the opposite. The opposite is dukkha, when we are getting unhappiness or sadness or problems. But this infinite happiness and permanent peace that we get from within has a different name in the philosophy, and this name is Ananda. A different word is used. If somebody is in a state of Ananda, one can be even sad in the external world, but that sadness, even though we experience it, it cannot disturb that inner state of Ananda. Okay, we'll talk more about this as we move ahead during this course, but let's move forward with the presentation. Okay, so in the search for happiness, first we go towards the physical enjoyment. Why? Because the senses attract us to the external world. And that attraction is normal. But the more we get something in the external world, the more we want. A millionaire wants to be a billionaire. One politician who is a city politician wants to be a state politician, wants to be a national politician. We always want more and more. And even we may think that, oh, if I have this kind of house, I will be happy. And then when we get that, we start thinking, maybe I need warmer room, maybe I need a veranda, maybe I need this and I need that. So we're always looking for something more. So the acquisition of something limited only creates the want for more. And what's the problem here? The problem is that the world is limited and our desire is infinite. So this unlimited quest with a limited world creates a problem. We will never be satisfied. What we really want is something infinite, something eternal, an everlasting happiness. To attain that, we need a source that is also infinite, that is also eternal, and that is also everlasting. If the source doesn't have these characteristics, we will end up dissatisfied. We will end up frustrated. So, what is that source that is infinite, eternal, and everlasting? That is what we call the cosmic entity. By definition, cosmic entity is infinite, is eternal, is limitless, and only that can make us happy, can satisfy our hunger for the eternal, our longing for the infinite. So, a philosophical point here is that the cosmic entity alone is infinite and is eternal. Getting back to the human beings, we have two aspects. One is our animal aspect, because we came from the animal world. We are now a developed being, but we were once an animal. So we have that leaning towards the physicality, enjoying the physical things. Animals, they want to eat, they want to sleep. If they have fear, they run away. And reproduction is a strong thing. And they are satisfied with limited enjoyments. They are satisfied if they have enough to eat, they are okay. But us human beings, maybe we got enough, but because of the taste, we want a little bit more and a little bit more, and we end up overeating more than we needed, because another drive is pulling us, pushing us, that thing that we want more. And that aspect comes from our conscious aspect, that characteristic of wanting more. But the point is, if we direct that wanting more to the physical, then it's a problem. So we have to direct it towards something else. So worldly material possessions, name, fame, power, position, all these cannot satisfy us. We have seen already politicians, they indulge in so many things trying to satisfy their urge for more. Even millionaires, they do the same. Celebrities, they are very famous, still they are not satisfied. They are frustrated. So what is happening? What is happening is that only if we realize the infinite, we can get satisfaction. Now we come to the word Dharma. What does it mean? It's a word from the Sanskrit language. It means nature or characteristic or property. So the nature of a being, the characteristic of a being, the property of a being, or an element. Suppose we take fire as an example. The characteristic of fire is to burn. The capacity to burn and fire are always together. One doesn't exist without the other. The fire exists because it burns. If it stops burning, it stops existing. So as long as there is something to burn, the fire exists. When it ends everything that was there to burn, it dies. So that's the Dharma of fire, to burn. What about human beings? If we say that we are happy just with eating, sleeping, reproducing, having fear, then there will be not much difference between us and animals. In fact, that's the dharma of animals, just to exist, eat, sleep, reproduce, have fear. But we have something more. We may have that aspect in us, but that's not the predominant aspect. We have that other aspect that we want something infinite. And that's what makes us really human. Otherwise, there will be no difference between us and animals. Even if we, as human beings, if we are just living like animals, it means we, we can be even considered worse than animals. Therefore, the part that makes us different from an animal is that desire for something infinite. So another point of philosophy here, that Dharma of human being is longing for attainment of the cosmic entity, longing for something that is infinite. And the cosmic entity in Sanskrit is Brahma. So what would be then the Dharma of human beings here? It will be that longing, that desire to attain something infinite, to attain the cosmic entity. Okay, so this is the first part. Now, if I say that the Dharma of human being is to attain the cosmic entity or Brahma, the question comes, does this Brahma really exist? That's the question of a human being. Why this question comes? Why do we have the question, does Brahma exist or not? And many people have this question. Some believe, some don't believe. But let us try to think about it in philosophical terms. When we do an action, we think that our sensory organs and our motor organs are doing the action. Suppose I am seeing a book. I may think that I'm seeing the book with my eyes, and maybe I'm touching the book with my hands. So, with my sensory organs, motor organs, I'm doing the action. But in fact, I'm only doing this action because that idea came in my mind. It came in my mind that I want to see the book, so I looked at the book and I saw it. If that was not in my mind, suppose in my mind I'm thinking about my holidays. Oh, these holidays I'm going to a nice island in the Caribbean, and the sea will be very blue and the weather will be very nice. That's in my mind. And in front of me is the book. So the vibrations of the book may be coming through my eyes, may be stimulating a part of my brain, but I'm not seeing the book. I'm seeing a nice blue sea, nice island. So that is what is in my mind, even though the vibrations of the book are coming to me, the form vibrations of the book are going through my eyes, stimulating my brain, but I don't see that. So in fact, if the mind is not engaged in the action is not happening. So it's the mind who is working behind the organs. So this looking at the book, this process of perception, how does it happen? Let's say that now my mind wants to look at the book, and I look at the book and I see the book. So the vibrations of the book are coming, stimulating my nerves. Now my mind wants to see it. Therefore, one part of the mind takes the shape of the book. Okay, one part of the mind takes the shape of the book. The other part of the mind, the second part of the mind, sees the book. Now, even if the book is not there in front of me, I can still create the image of the book in my mind. That's memory. I create the image of the book in my mind, even without the help of the sensory organ, and I see it. So we saw here there are two parts of the mind in action. One is, and this is mental, this is not the physical part, this is mental. One part of the mind of substance, of mental substance, is taking the shape of the book. Another part of the mind is looking at it. But who is seeing? Who is seeing is I. So this I is a third part of the mind. So coming here, there are three parts of the mind. The first, the most external part is called the chitta. Chitta is the part of the mind that takes the shape of the object. The other part is the aham. Aham is the part that sees the object. But who sees is the I. So that I is the third part of the mind, which is called mahat. I see the object. So these three parts of the mind to get the perception of that object. Putting some more philosophical terms there, the action of seeing a book is the psychic assimilation of, here two Sanskrit words, the psychic assimilation of rupa means form, tanmatra. Tanmatra is the wave that is radiated from the object and that comes to my eyes. So that wave is called tanmatra. And this tanmatra can be form, sound, smell, taste, touch. In this case here, I'm seeing the book, so it's a form tanmatra, a rupa tanmatra. Now, what happens in the mind? The chitta has the capacity to take the form of the object when the aham wants it. Now, the aham has the capacity to perform actions, but it is the I that makes the aham work. So this is how the three parts of the mind work together in the work of perception. Okay? Now, what is beyond the mind? What is witnessing the mind? That same I, the same I that's in the mind, in the mahat, that I is the I that is witnessing the mind. And one part of it is expressed in the mind. So that I, which knows that there is a mind, that is the soul or unit consciousness, in Sanskrit, Atman. So this is an important point here. We started by doing an action, thinking that it is my body who is doing the action. But then I realized that no, it's not my body who is doing the action, it's actually the mind. If there was no mind, the body would not do the action. Then I come to the mind. How does the mind work? The mind creates the shape or the image of what I want to do inside it. But it only does it if it wants it. So with one part of the mind, second part of the mind, and who really wants it is the I. So the third part of the mind is the I. But that I that's present in the mind, that I is beyond the mind. It is present in the mind, but it's beyond the mind. That's the unit consciousness. That is the Atman, and that's what we call the soul. If we meditate deeply, we can observe that that I, which I call here unit consciousness, and that I in the mind and the rest of the mind. So unit consciousness and mind are two separate entities. So there was the I of unit consciousness, and that I expressed itself in the mind. So first it's only witnessing, I know, and then it becomes I exist. Then it becomes I do, I can do action, I do. And then it becomes the action itself, have done, or the done I. So that I is being modified, is being qualified. First it was pure I, then it expressed in the mind as the Mahat, I exist, as the Aham, as the Chitta. So that same I is being modified. So what modifies that I? I bring another concept here, the concept of Prakriti. Prakriti is that which qualifies. Prakriti is that which acts in a certain way, which does something in a certain way. So what does it do? It just qualifies the Atman. So first it was just I know, and that was the Atman. Then it changed. It became conscious of its existence. I exist, Mahat, Mahatattva. So Prakriti modifies the consciousness. The unit consciousness gets modified. So Prakriti is a principle of the consciousness. It exists wherever exists consciousness, which is in Sanskrit called Purusha, exists also Prakriti. But sometimes it's more active and sometimes less active. When the unit consciousness is the pure I, then Prakriti is not active there. When it becomes the mind, I exist, then Prakriti is becoming active. All right, so now we started from the external action. Now we came to the point where we think that there exists consciousness, pure consciousness, unit consciousness, so the Atman. So I'm a human being, I have a unit consciousness, other human being, other unit consciousness, even other beings also have unit consciousness, less expressed in the mind. My unit consciousness as a human being is more expressed in the mind. Therefore, I'm a more developed being. A less developed being, that unit consciousness is less expressed in the mind. So one unit consciousness, one drop here, another one, another drop, another one, another drop. If we put all these unit consciousness together, all these drops together, then we get a big ocean. So now this collective name for all these unit consciousnesses is the Paramatman, or the Supreme Soul, also called Bhagavan, Universal Consciousness, or Universal Soul. Coming from the action that we were doing in the external world, understanding that's not the body that does it, that it's the mind, understanding the various aspects of the mind, that the witness of the mind is the consciousness, the unit consciousness. All the unit consciousnesses together form the supreme consciousness, or the universal consciousness. Then we come to another philosophical conclusion here. This shows that Bhagavan does exist, and that it exists as Paramatman, or universal soul, Bhuma Chaitanya, or cosmic consciousness, or Brahma, the eternal blessedness. Just different names for the same entity. And what entity is that? That is the collectivity of all the unit consciousnesses. Okay, we are very near the end of the presentation, so you can already start thinking about your questions. I will come to a summary of what we saw today. So the chapter was about what is Dharma. We started from human with the statement that the human being is the highest evolved being and has a clear reflected consciousness. That human beings are searching for happiness. And in this search for happiness, they first go to physical enjoyments. Then they realize that these physical enjoyments are limited and cannot satisfy them. So they start searching for something that's infinite. And the only thing that is infinite is the cosmic entity, and that is Brahma. So that is the nature or the characteristic of a human being. That is the Dharma of the human being. Human beings have the tendency to think that we are the body composed of these 10 organs, 10 sensory and motor organs, but we can easily find that we are more mental than physical, and the action is happening in the mind, and that the mind has 3 parts. Chitta takes the form, Aham Tattva is the I that works, and Mahatattva is the pure I feeling, the I am. To witness the mind, that same I that is in the mind is the I which knows, and the I which knows is the unit consciousness or the soul. So the same I of the unit consciousness is expressed in the mind as the I am and as the I that works. And who changes that I is Prakriti. Prakriti qualifies the Atman. We also talked about the Tanmatra, which are the waves radiated from an object and that come to the organs, to the Indriyas. And in the end, I said that the sum total of all the unit souls, all the Atmans, is equal to Bhagavan, which is also Paramatman, or universal consciousness, universal soul, which is also Brahma, which is the eternal blessedness, which is also Bhuma Chaitanya, cosmic consciousness. So these are different names for the same thing: Bhagavan, Paramatman, Brahma, and Bhuma Chaitanya. Now we come to the conclusion that Brahma exists. And before I take your questions, I'm going to ask one question to you. That's the question. You will have to find out what's the wrong statement there. Let me show you these results. 13% said the first one is wrong. Actually, it's the first one that is wrong because the mind is Chitta, Ham, and Mahat. And if you see there, is showing Chitta, Aham, and Atman. So the last part is wrong. Now the other ones are correct because the Mahatattva gives the feeling of I to the mind. You know, the unit consciousness is the witnessing. It has the pure I, but you become conscious of the eyes only when the eye is expressed in the mind. So it is expressed in the mind in the Mahat or Mahatattva. So there you get the feeling of I. So most of the people thought this was wrong, probably because you were thinking that it is the Atman that gives the feeling of I. But the Atman is the feeling of I, but you only get it when it expresses in your mind. And where does it express? In the Mahatattva. The Chitta takes the form of the object, that's correct. The Aham is the I that works, yes. The Aham is the I that works. So the Aham wants to do something, and then the Chitta follows the Aham. So the Aham is the one that works. And the last one, the Atman, is the witness of the mind. Yes, the soul is the witness of the mind. So that is also correct. So the wrong one is the number one. Okay, it's a little bit tricky. You had to see the last part of it. So not a big problem there. I will put another question here. It's similar to the first one, and it's mostly regarding Prakriti. Now let's see. Prakriti. Prakriti is the principle of Purusha. Yes, this is correct. So what does it mean? It means here, principle means it has the quality or it has the capacity to modify Purusha. So it is present in Purusha all the time. It is lying there as a principle. It's actually the operative principle. Purusha means consciousness. Yes, Purusha is consciousness. Prakriti is energy or force. And Prakriti exists within Purusha. Yes. If you see, Purusha is consciousness. Let's say it's the I. Now, this I gets modified. How does it get modified? By the operative principle, Prakriti. And where does Prakriti exist? It exists within the consciousness, and it modifies the consciousness. So wherever there is consciousness, there is also Prakriti. So wherever there is Purusha, there is Prakriti. That's also correct. Now we come to the last one. Prakriti has three gunas. It has three gunas, but the names are wrong there. The first one, static, and the second one, tamaguna, are the same thing. Static or tamaguna is the same. The other one, rajaguna, means the mutative. And the last one is sattva-guna, which is the sentient principle. So these three gunas are present in Prakriti. I didn't talk much about these gunas, but let me just mention it. When the Atman is modified, okay, when unit consciousness, which is the I, when that I is modified by the sentient principle or the sentient guna, the sattva guna, it becomes the mahat, is the most subtle part of the mind. When that same I is modified by the rajaguna, then it becomes the aham. You see, the aham always wants to do. So there is rajaguna in it. And when that I is modified by the tamaguna or the static force, then it becomes the chitta. So the three parts of the mind are the work of Prakriti, are the work of the three gunas of Prakriti. Okay. Going back to the summary. And now questions and answers. This is a technical question. Are we supposed to read the chapter before the class? It would be good. It's good if you can read it before the class so you already have some idea. And I'm designing the class in a way to make it easy to understand the chapter. But the details, many times the details you get by reading it. So if you read before the class, and there'll be some things you don't understand, then with the class it should help you to understand. So by the end of the class, after reading, you can see if you really got the main points from that. What is the relationship between Chitta, Mahatattva, and Aham Tattva and the 5 layers of the mind? Okay. I didn't talk about the 5 layers of the mind here, so maybe not all the people are aware of it. Let me just mention a little bit. The 5 layers of the mind are the conscious part of the mind, the subconscious part of the mind, and 3 layers of the unconscious. One is the supramental, the other we call it subliminal, and the other one we call the causal part of the mind. Now, most of it is related to the chitta. So the 5 layers of the mind are mostly related to the chitta. But there is some presence of the I feeling also on the layers of the mind. And there is also that I do part in it, but it's mostly related to the chitta. The question is like this. I want to clarify that if it is Prakriti that modifies Purusha, that means that Prakriti modifies the Atman by the 3 gunas and creates the 3 parts of the mind. Yes, basically that's the action of Prakriti. Prakriti is modifying the Atman, and then you're getting the 3 ways of the same I. The I in Mahatattva is the I am, the I in Aham Tattva, I do, and the I in the Chitta is the done I. So it's the same I of the soul the pure consciousness, which is modified and present in these three parts of the mind. Okay, another question here. So it will go chapter by chapter. Each class is one chapter? Yes. I organized it in such a way that in each class we'll go one chapter. So there are 9 chapters in the book. And the last class will be like a conclusion to put everything together and to solve any difficulties which may be there. Another question here. Is Prakriti governed by Purusha? Yes. Prakriti can only act because Purusha allows it to act. So it is the dominating factor is the Purusha. And the Prakriti only starts acting when Purusha allows it to act. Okay, the question is like this. We are brought up to work and collect. Do the different layers know what they want? Inside of us, is there an inherent need to get to the level where we don't want anything material? Okay, so when we are brought up as a child, we are told we have to do something and we have to accumulate things. And but deep within us, there is always this desire of something deeper, something non-material. So eventually, in a human being's life, it will come the moment when we realize that the material is not really what we want. We want something deeper. And that's the time that people start looking for spiritual things. And when that time comes in our mind and we start looking for spiritual things, then we start seeing it. It was already there, but we just didn't see it. But that moment we start seeing it. I remember one story. I was in Africa, and one day one man came to see me, and he said that he wanted to learn meditation and he needs it very much. And then he told me, Dada, I know you from a long time. I used to see you walk into town and I used to pass by car and I look at you and I say, who is that guy? What does he do? And now what happened in my life is that I lost my job, means he had a company and the company went bankrupt. His wife left him, so his family was in crisis. And he was thinking, who can help him? And then it came in his mind that I could help him. And then he came to me. He knew me all along for a long time, but he never had the desire to come. But one day something changed in his life, which made him think deeper and think what is really important in life. And then he came to the conclusion that, oh, there I can find it. So everything is already in front of us, but we just don't see it. It's like the mind. The aham will see the book if it wants. So the mind will see the book if the aham wants. The book may be in front of us, but we are thinking about our vacations. We don't see the book. So in the same way, spirituality is always in front of us. The education maybe is telling us, do this, do that, become rich, find a work, learn this, learn that. But eventually will come a day that we wake up and then we change. Okay, the question if this chapter relates to what is Dharma. Yes, this is the chapter What is Dharma? Somebody who came late. Okay, another question. Some people feel happy when they do things bad to others. Doesn't this go against their internal mechanisms? Isn't there any initial remorse or is there something chemically wrong? Okay, this is related to another point which we didn't talk in this class, which is the samskaras. Some people call it like the law of karma. You do something and you get a reaction. So you do an action, you get a reaction. If the reaction is not yet expressed and remains in potential form, it's called samskaras. Many samskaras together means the collectivity of samskaras affect how we are. So that person who gets happy by doing something bad to others, their mind has been influenced by the samskaras in that way. So he will do something according to his samskaras. So his samskaras is in such a way that makes him do something bad. So what to do in this case? We have to infuse new samskaras in his mind so that these new samskaras will change the way the mind is, and the mind will start seeing things in a different way. So start seeing that, oh, that what I'm doing is not good. So that can be done through imposing new samskaras. What are ways to impose new samskaras? Education is a way, environment is a way. So that will change the person. Now, is there something chemically wrong? Usually the mind will influence the body. So if the mind is working a certain way, will influence the body, and the hormones that will be produced will be matching the way the mind is. So body and mind will work in a very connected way. So nowadays, people use drugs. So if the drugs will affect the hormones, will affect the glands, and may have an effect in the mind, it will have more effect that besides working on the body, if we also work in the mind by changing the mind, that will also change the hormones and will change the chemical way that the body is functioning. Okay, so one question may be related to this. Was Prakriti responsible for the change in the man's mind? Okay, Prakriti is the principle that changes it. Okay, so everything is an action of, or how to say, everything is happening because of these gunas of Prakriti. So Prakriti is making the changes. But Purusha, which is the consciousness, is the controlling factor of the Prakriti. So in the end, yes, Prakriti is doing everything, but the permission to do it is given by the Purusha. And there is one more question here. Let me see, this is, please go over the 5 layers of mind again. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about the 5 layers of the mind, and then I will end this session today. Okay, 5 layers of the mind. The first layer is the part of the mind that's more connected to the external world, and that is the conscious part of the mind. It deals with the sensory organs, motor organs. So when we are talking, we are moving, doing some action, we are using the conscious part of the mind. The next one is the subconscious. The subconscious is related to thinking deeply, memory, the intellect when you are analyzing something, dreams. Usually, when you are sleeping, the conscious part of the mind is suspended and the dream is happening in the subconscious. The conscious mind has a certain dimension. The subconscious is larger. So, an experience in the subconscious is usually deeper than in the conscious. Okay, so conscious and subconscious are the parts of the mind that people use the most. And that's why many times we don't think that there exists anything deeper. Like people will say, Brahma doesn't exist because I can't see it. Because they are only using the conscious and the subconscious part of the mind. Deeper than the subconscious is one part that we call supramental. The supramental part is related to certain faculties of the mind, like creativity. The people who are genius, they are basically using this supramental part of the mind. It's related to intuition. Intuition is the capacity to realize things. For example, when Newton saw the apple falling down, and then he came up with this idea of gravity, it was not a result of his intellectual work. It was a result of some intuitional capacity. So that comes from this third level of the supramental level of the mind. And then beyond that, there is the subliminal level of the mind. The subliminal level of the mind is related to another faculty, the capacity to distinguish between what to do, what not to do, what is good, what is not good. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, good is what takes me towards consciousness, bad, what takes me towards material. So, this capacity to know it comes from the fourth level of the mind. So great personalities, prophets, saints, they had this fourth level of the mind well developed. And the fifth level is the causal part of the mind. And that is called the golden layer. And that is the cause of the existence of the mind. So in this level is more the sentient guna of the Prakriti is active. Thank you for attending today. If you have questions, still we can correspond via email. Make an effort to read the next chapter before the next class. And also try to familiarize with the raising hand feature. And if you can get a microphone and a headset, we may get you also to speak, to ask your questions and also to introduce yourselves during the next or the future meeting. Thank you very much and good night.